guys. Welcome to Carlie's Couch. It's Lextopia and CC Fierce.
Hola.
Hope you're doing well. Hope you're ready for a good week.
Because I know I am.
I know I am.
Just saying.
I hope so. I guess nobody ever wants to be ready for a bad week, so way to stay positive, always. Today, we're talking about communication, and I want to talk about like understanding communication issues. I feel like we all have issues with people sometimes, and you realize it's just because of communication or because of misunderstandings and things of that nature. And then there's the other side of it where, you know, sometimes we feel awkward or, you know, it's hard to communicate. Why is that? What is that? And so those types of things we want to discuss from our own experiences and talking about how we've worked on them and how you can work on those things yourself.
In every area. I mean, you communicate with everybody all the time. And so it's something that we could all use, you know, some improvement and also just looking at our growth throughout the years, whether it be in business or relationships or friendships.
Mm-hmm. And your eyeliner looks really good.
Thanks. I haven't worn eyeliner in a while.
Yeah, maybe that's why I noticed it, because usually just do it regular. And then another super random that has nothing to do with this episode thing is I realized, Carlie, because every time I see a still of you from videos or when we're editing, I was like, man, like you're reminding me of somebody, but I couldn't quite put my hand on it. And then I realized, like, oh, you look just like Paula Patton sometimes. That's who I see sometimes when I see you from certain angles or like when I'm looking at the videos and stuff. Do you know who Paula Patton is?
I do. I've heard that before.
Yeah,
I mean,
do.
Sometimes
Just
I think like
eyes.
in certain angles, like I can catch it.
No, yeah, she's beautiful.
She's gorgeous.
Right, that's a good one for people to say, but you look just like her sometimes. So that makes me think, like, I wonder if you did like the darker hair, or I don't know if you would pull off the same types of haircuts and stuff, but I was like, I could see you being her, take over her life, switch. Probably be a better actress, but I ain't gonna take it there. I already did, whatever. So communications, as Carlie has said before we went off topic, yes, they're with everybody. So it's important to recognize where you might be having difficulties. And not so much so it's always like these episodes aren't just what can I beat myself up about this week? Mm-hmm. But to understand which of these things, whether it's not getting enough rest or being hard on yourself, communication, how are these things holding you back from what you're trying to be, right? Like your better self. If we always keep coming back to what's the center point of us doing this podcast, it's because, you know, we're always just working to improve and be better. And so whatever topic it is, you know, yes, we're examining ourselves because, you know, how can I be doing better at my job if my communication might be better?
Exactly.
Stuff like that. So, you know, when we're saying, like, think about these things, it's not like, you know, totally supposed to be a negative at all, but just an exploration.
As I was like, yeah, I would never even say I don't think it's ever negative. I think it's just being direct and more self-aware, but it's also about giving yourselves the tools that you need to create a life that you love and that you enjoy. I saw I was fangirling one of your tweets last week or maybe the week before that, but you were like, I never have FOMO because I'm always doing exactly what I want to do.
Never. If I'm at home and everybody's at a party, like, y'all enjoy. I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, and that makes life better. But then there's sometimes when you're like, something's going on, you're feeling frazzled or upset, and, you know, that's examination of an ownership to be like, all right, where can I do something different, or what can I be working on to improve the situations where I'm not feeling my best, you know?
And that's where all of these come in, and I was really excited to talk about communication. I talk about it a lot with clients in the summer camps and the kids that I work with, like helping them learn about it. And so we're going to examine ourselves. So when we say communication, like what do you think of, like when I say communication?
With the term communication, I'm thinking of a complete understanding of a message to an audience and them receiving it and understanding what you mean. So if somebody were to say actually good communication, that's what I would say. That's what communication is, a two-way expressing an idea and then receiving and understanding that idea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's nothing
Is that
else.
Good?
I think that is.
Yeah,
I think the part that people fail to get, or the part that people struggle with the most, is that it's a two-way street and that it is, in fact, like not necessarily always in your control how they perceive a message, but you can best tailor it when you're putting it out there.
Is it a two-way street when you're like watching a speech or like the president or a governor or something
Well,
like that?
it is because it's like they're coming out with a message and you're still receiving it. So it's still a two-way street and you still walk away with your opinion and with what you thought that they said, regardless of if it's in person or not.
That's true. And then it's also your messages that are nonverbal as well. Like all of it is part of communication in the way you're presenting yourself and your words. I would say to throw in an extra layer to that as well.
Put a little oomph on it.
Yeah,
but
put a little pizzazz on there.
But actually, most of communication is body language, anyways. And people are like, "Oh, it's on that 93%." I actually looked up the correct statistics. I don't have them on hand. I will tweet them at some point this week. But it is mostly nonverbal is like the biggest parts of communication. So facial expressions, body language, like what you're doing with your hands.
So, but when you say mostly, are we really saying that's the most sincere body language? Like what you're doing with your body is really what you're saying? Because sometimes people have things like, and I literally have a thing. Like I twitch and fidget, and it's not about, it's not always about message, but there is actually some things that is displaying. But, I think there's some things that you just do, and then maybe there are some things that really are expressive. So part of communication also is having the right filter on how you perceive.
Exactly.
Because, my arms could be crossed because I'm cold, but if it looks like I'm being extra rude because I already sound rude, you know what I mean? Like, then that's still my problem, I guess, though, at the end of the day. So
it's layers on layers.
Maybe I'll take that back. Yeah.
But it could also be my perception because,
and you're not communicating that you think I'm mad or,
exactly.
Whatever it may be. I don't know. But, it goes a lot of ways, and it's not just on you, but, like, I guess we should talk about, too, in our following discussion, what's our responsibilities in communication versus some things you really don't have control over.
Exactly. And even that little tidbit of discussion shows how many layers there is in communication in general and how things can get caught up.
I used to be terrible at communication. I guess I'll get into that with my story, but I got my master's in intercultural communication and my work, I started a company around communication and I have to communicate a lot. And so there's a lot of layers even to my story about it with my personal, and then like there's business and different areas of communication and different levels of how to communicate that I've actually studied and learned. And there's a lot of things about communication that you can learn. It's not always just life experience. I mean, part of it is that, but you can get better at it. And so that's what I really want to get across to you, is that you can learn things and can improve things to be a better communicator.
Professor Lex.
Oh, gosh. Shout out, Nate.
Shout out to Nate.
I know you're listening.
Every week.
Our number one fan. Thank you.
So we appreciate you. How are your communications? Because you mentioned that they used to be trash, but that they're better. So how are they now? And if there's a scale of 1 being abysmal and 10 being like phenomenal, how would you rate yourself?
I always think too much. So now I'm thinking, what is the basis of success on that? Is it that you rarely have misunderstandings?
I mean,
that's how I would think
you
about
can
it.
Qualify your
that's how I
answer.
Qualify mine to say, like, how many misunderstandings do I tend to have with people for me to base that my communication is pretty good? I would say from a 1 to 10, I would say about a 7 or 7.5.
Nice.
Because of what I just said. That's how I think about it.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I think my communication skills have always been pretty decent, but I think as I've gotten older and become more self-aware, I've realized my lenses and filters that I put on things, and I'm able to actually be present in the moment, which has helped a lot, and listen better. And so I would say I'm like an 8. I'm a solid 8.
That's good. That's good. What are the couple things that, I mean, not like real life situations per se, but what are the couple of things that kind of keep you from saying a 10?
Well, because 1, I think there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
So that's like knocks me to a 9. And then I would say with my lenses, sometimes, it also in text message and email, it's really hard to get context of things sometimes. And I might take something a certain way that's not what it was intended for.
So you feel like in communication, you're affected certain ways sometimes that you see.
Yeah, that might not be like correct or might not be the intent of the person, but it's how I'm impacted. And so filtering through that, like I'm still learning a lot.
Okay, yeah, I would include part of that in mine too. Isn't it so interesting that we have a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being perfect, but then if you're never supposed to have a perfect, why is there into the scale?
Exactly. I mean, that's life, though. That's everything.
But then that means, like, can you really even quantify anything? Do you have a particular communication style?
I was about to say, well, here we get into, the bigger ethereal concepts of life. Yeah, I use, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it.
Your communication style?
Mm-hmm. Like, I know, like, the words from, like, different tests and things that I've done. I would say open, authentic, and I like to be direct. Mm-hmm. And so that's the kind of, like, I am very much open, always comes from a good place, and I always intend to come from a good place. That doesn't always mean that my impact is necessarily good, but I always try to. And then I like to be more direct about things. I really don't like passive aggressive things. And I'm just thinking about, like, friends or business or any type of communication. I really just like to put everything out there and have that conversation. How would you define yours?
I would say that mine is pretty direct and to the point and informational and closed. Or I don't know about closed, but not open. It's more like if we're communicating, we're probably communicating about a specific thing, and it's not a very, like, room to be moving around and having a lot of extra convo around it. It's like we're doing a thing and that's it. I would say that that's the communication style I have when I'm thinking about it. But with my closest relationships, like with my brother, with my friends, when they're over and stuff like that, I am very open and I'm very much goofier and carefree. And so there's different audiences, I guess I would say. But I'm very open, maybe still not so much like of myself to other people, but I'm very open about knowing myself and talking about things that I'm not really, like afraid to, like, keep to myself with certain people. So I think it just depends on the audience.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, as it should. Mm-hmm. Like, there should be some type of filter in, like, business relationships and, like, friendships.
Yeah, but just even in general, like, I'm trying not to make sure that when we have these conversations, I'm not just thinking about, like, just work stuff, or and it's not about it being work or not work. It's about what's about my relationship with these people. And so my communication style overall, I guess, is still like the direct or whatever. But of course, like, it's, it's going to be different with other people. And I already mentioned that I had so much trouble with communication in the past. And for me, I really discovered that, I think, in high school and then going into college as well. Like, I did not, first of all, like, I was so introverted and I did not, like, hang out with a lot of people, period, anyway. So I think I grew up not really communicating a lot to outside people, like outside of my family. I wasn't hanging out a lot, stuff like that. And this in hindsight, like, I saw it as a negative thing to have needs. I saw it as a negative thing to, like, be getting emotional, or I had the views from my family that things are okay, or, like, that things are supposed to be okay. When you think about how you grew up, and it's always like, oh, we might not have a lot, but, we're good, and we were good. And so you're always thinking, like, okay, like,
you're good.
Yeah, like, it's not, like, I'm not out here, like, talking about every little thing that's happening, because to me, I'm like, well, we're working through, it's fine. And then, of course, in a Black household, you keep your business inside. Not that this was some dramatic, like, speech or anything I got, but, this is how I know now, this is how I grew up, is that you don't talk a lot. You don't tell all your business. You don't, as a kid, I wasn't like the kid. You're like, oh, I saw my mom say this or do this. You know how kids do. And I did not even really talk to my parents that much, like, having, like, conversations about, like, oh, how do I feel about this or that? It was always, like, what's going on with school and stuff like that, of course, but I just don't remember having a lot of, like, lengthy conversations. So I grew up, my high school, college years, kind of just having a lot of internal combos and, like, kind of being to myself and in my own head. And as I'm getting older, the biggest thing I'm learning is getting out of my own head, because I'm talking to myself and, like, or I'm saying things and then there's, like, a disconnect from either people or what I'm doing or whatever, because, like, I've had this whole thing already in my head. And I can get more into that maybe weird or later, but when I'm talking to people, like, it's also a competition. Like, I'm looking to win something. I'm not listening. I've talked about not being a great listener. All of those things kind of stem from that, I think, and feeling like I'm supposed to keep stuff to myself, even to the extent of because I didn't want to express emotion or because I didn't want to communicate issues or things going on or whatever to other people, I was harming myself. And to me, that was how I got relief. And so I had a very, I don't know if negative is the right word, but I had the wrong way of how to communicate, which was not doing it and letting it build up so much that how do I get rid of this or how do I, release whatever tension or whatever. And so that was such a bad spiral for me to now say like, oh, I majored in that and that's my work. And I'm like much better. So like even when people like kind of make fun of me, like, oh, you're not listening, whatever. I'm like, man, you wish like you're glad you know me now.
You ain't even know.
You ain't even know what it was really like. But, that's my past with it. And so, yes, a lot of trouble with communications. And then because you grow up like that, you don't really realize, oh, like people like really talk to their parents about everything and every day. And like you do this or you do that differently than what I grew up doing. And so now I see that and understand that and kind of like reprocess those things.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of things that influence the way that people communicate and how they receive information and give it. Saying that is so interesting. I think a lot of households of color just don't talk about stuff like in general. Like you just don't talk about your business to other people. But it's also interesting because my mom doesn't really have a lot of boundaries when it comes to emotions. So she's just super emotions all the time and she'll let you know how she feels. And so for me, I had to learn boundaries, like over communication.
So maybe you saw it, whereas I never saw my parents being like really affected by things. Or like I'm always seeing them being strong about everything. And now I see like, oh, that's kind of how I am too.
Yeah, it's just like more like even kill, like regardless of what's going on. Because we were always good too.
Like
even when we
showing.
wasn't good, we was good.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting because like out to the outside world, she wouldn't really show like everything she was going through. But I would see a lot of it, just being at the crib. But that was one thing I had to realize in communication is over communicating. Also thinking that I'm knowing how people feel because I am empathic and I do like.
That's being over responsible.
Yeah, exactly. Like taking
people.
responsibility for other people, but also trying to solve their problems. So they'd be having a conversation and I automatically used to just be like, okay, well, they said this. Okay, I can do this and I'll connect them with this. And I'm start solving this whole issue they haven't even told me about that they wanted solving. They just kind of wanted to vent. And so I go into fix it mode, which helps me not to listen. And then which also causes a lot of interruptions because I'm like trying to finish people's sentences. So this was like, Carlie in the past, praise the Lord, I've given up trying to be the savior of the universe because I can't do that. But giving people space to show up however they want to and then asking if they need help has been like a game changer.
And I think that's so interesting that you're saying that your past of, communications issues you recognize and the ones you just said are the ones I would say I have presently. So like I don't have as much of the other ones as I said before, or like I'm much more aware and like I'm more conscientious of it. But right now, some of the biggest things in communication I noticed are trying to solve things or like say what they're trying to say before they say it. I do that a lot. So that is like the top things I'm kind of working on too presently.
How did you? Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, how did you get better with these skills? But and aside from your major, also like, or maybe that was really what was the pivotal moment for you.
So in college was my like, I think I like was self-harming in like high school towards the end of high school, but I did that all through college. And then after college, there was a couple years that I worked at my university before I went to grad school. So it wasn't immediate. And it was something about that time, that couple of years. And then I was in a different relationship and somebody who just got engaged and just got a house. Congrats. I hit him up yesterday. I was in a different relationship and I've said it before, I'm not sure what changed. I think I just started slowly being a little more open and maybe trusting of certain people that were close to me to where I clicked off of like doing that kind of stuff. But I think over time it's recognizing that something can be different. And so it's a mindset shift that I had to go through. And I think really understanding, and this is what I still have to like push, it sounds kind of sad to say this, but to myself now that, relationships really matter and the people really matter. And you can't treat people like they don't matter, right? Like, and a lot of times it's easy for me to just be thinking about what I care about or what I need to say, and I'm communicating, but I'm not really like either maintaining or, communicating the way that I could with other people. But the people are important. And without them, that's why I'm just sitting here like overthinking or in my head. And, the more I speak to people, especially as of late in the last few weeks even, the more I speak to people and communicate outwardly more instead of being in my head, the more breakthroughs I've been having with my own stuff.
That's awesome.
So recognizing that, and I think over time, that's just how I improved with certain communication skills is just kind of like facing it. And then as you start to see like the breakthroughs of it and understanding of yourself and learning yourself, you kind of can unravel it a little bit better and be able to detach from it. I'm trying to see what else I wrote down. But yeah, actually, that's basically it. Like, I've been aware of it, and I've set certain goals. There's certain goals I have right now around myself and, like, literal things I'm trying to do or catch or be aware of. And it's been my friends and therapy and things like that have been very helpful.
Did something happen, or did you have an experience that made you want to start being more open? Or you just gradually started doing it?
No, not that I think so. I mean, I'm 34 now, though, also, and talking to somebody I just met, they say, like, I can't get a feel for you. Like, you seem very guarded. And so it's not necessarily changed. Like, I still present that way. So I wouldn't say it's like, oh, man, I'm super open now. But the improvement maybe is more so my thought process around it and understanding. And, like, I know it's there, and now it's just, and maybe it's a quicker time of like, letting the people in or not. I'm not gonna be the extra person when I first meet people and stuff ever. But I think that's fine. I don't think that should be an issue with anybody necessarily. And I do need people to prove that they matter for me to really like start to let go.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they have to be like, oh, can you do something for me? But like, I just, if it's somebody I'm not connecting with, like I'm not connecting. So, it's just over time. And yeah, like right now I would just say I'm just being more aware of it is the better thing about it.
Oh, I think that's dope. And that just naturally happens, like, I guess, as you become more self-aware.
Yeah, I wish there was a thing. Because I feel like everybody always has a story about, like, yeah, and then one day this happened. And unless it's some traumatic thing that I'm, like, totally blocking out, like, I don't recall. I don't recall. It just changed.
I mean, that happens when you're growing and in life. Like, that's life experience.
Yeah, and even just now, again, at 34, like, I'm just now, and I was telling my friend about this the other day, like, when I talk to my mom, I'm actually getting a little bit more into, like, how I feel about something or whatever. And I'll feel so emotional saying it, like, regular thing, and regular for that I would think normal people feel. But to me, I'm like, this feels regular, but I feel so, like, full of emotion because I'm not used to, like, even saying some, small, regular, chill things. But I'm like, man, I'm, like, just now starting to, like, talk like that with them. So it's still so much more to do.
That's probably really special for them.
I don't know. I mean, it's probably not, it doesn't feel like anything probably to them because it's like, we're having a regular conversation. But I'm like, why have I not done this,
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
It's not like they've been pushing me to and I just don't talk. I just, maybe we're similar. Maybe that's because we're kind of like the same, and I became that same type of person maybe. So it may be part of that.
Yeah, I think the biggest change for me was listening to listen. So that was like a huge thing, like not to respond, not to fix, not to coddle, not to do whatever, like support them, but just to listen and holding space and then giving people space and grace to show up however they show up in conversations. I'm thinking a lot like friendships and just, like you mentioned, showing people that they matter and, spending intentional time or checking in on them intentionally to see how everything is going. And it's helpful when I've had friends that are like a little bit older in my life who hit me up and be like, hey, like, I text you, can you please text me back? Because sometimes I struggle with like replying and doing things like that. But like Charlie hit me up and was like, yo, like, hit me back, fam. Like, that matters to me. It makes me feel, not cared for, but not seen or heard. She's like, I took the time to message you, like, hit me back. And so make sure I'm better about those things with people.
With that and some of the things you said earlier, what made you think that those were a problem?
Well, like when people tell you like, hey, that hurt my feelings, or hey, I don't feel seen, like as your friend, or it would really mean a lot to me if
People say that?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's good. I've never, outside of like relationships, like romantic relationships, I don't have experiences like with a friend or saying that or even feeling that way.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sure other people may feel like that though.
I think it's letting people feel that and letting that be their thing, but also like letting go of the need. Like, so in college, I used to like care about this, like, oh, you didn't text me back, or oh, you said we were gonna do this and we didn't go do this weekend. And now I'm like, self-care always. Like, if you get too tired and we have plans, just cancel. Like, it's fine. I'd rather you do whatever it takes for you to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the relationship as well, because the more I really like learn my friends, because I'm, if I'm trying to care more or make sure I'm really, knowing who they are and talking to them, if I know my friends and I know like if they didn't hit me back, like, like I'm not gonna feel that. Like I love you who you are, but I also do recognize like when that's you, how can that feel sometimes, and making sure it's just not always like a consistent thing where you're like, oh, like we're cool, so it doesn't matter about them. Like you can't let familiarity breed contempt with your relationships either. But it's a respect for each other, because the quickest way to get me to like shut down on a person is if they're like hello, or like if they hit you with like a bunch of dots. I'm like,
same, I hate it.
Like what?
Or even questioning their text message. I don't like that either.
Well, I do that because I'm like, I don't know what you said. That just means I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I mean like if I text you and I'm like, hey, you don't hit me back, and then I question my own text message.
Like coming back to like be like, annoying. So what's up?
Yeah, so what's up then?
Yeah, and I mean, and again, that it depends on who that person is. Have they done that before? Do they do it all the time? So it depends on the person. But like in relationships, I've definitely been that person before. It's like, you not text me back, or like this or that. And then it's crazy how so much better, like a zillion times better, the relationship is with people when you don't do that at all. Like, man, like just giving people a space, like then they hit you, they talk to you, they call you all the time. And it's like, you don't have to be pressed about that. You're pressed about that because you're like being over responsible and like thinking like, is something wrong? Or did I do something? Is this because of me? Like all of those things are being over responsible for somebody else. And so, it's learning to be more responsible for yourself and learning to be more focused on yourself, especially as women. I think that's something that we tend to have more of a growth that we have to do in that space, unfortunately, which is kind of the stories that we're telling you now. So like even as women, like communication too, there's other aspects of it with men and women and opposite sex and how we communicate and why, and it's a lot. And you better just know what you care about and know who you are, and make sure that you're communicating in a way that doesn't put you in any bad light per se, but that's honest to yourself.
I was about to say, yeah, that honors you and that allows you to speak your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's scary or even if you feel a type of way about it, just speak your truth and let the chips fall where they may. And that's in any type of thing, business, relationships, friendships, whatever. We've talked about getting better in communication. And are there any things that you're like intentionally working on when it comes to communication?
Right now I'm working on moving less. So please call me out. It's wild to me that it literally just sunk in like a week ago how much I move, and now I know why I do that too. And I'm detaching from the moment. I'm always trying to snap myself out of like having a feeling or recognizing my emotions or what I'm feeling, and which keeps me very robotic with the way I could speak, right? It takes my attention away and I'm diverted. And that's when I get real like all over the place about stuff. So I'm really working on moving less, being more still. And that's important with communication because that means I'm probably more so actually focused on you talking. And because it allows me to really think more about what I'm saying and let myself like feel what I'm saying. So that's what that's about. And then I would say too, like listening and not cutting people off, which you said earlier is a big thing for me. And every time I do that, I'm like, and then this, and then that. It's like, shoot, like I always catch myself. Yeah. And my friends call me out on it too. So it helps me to stay aware of that. So just maybe being more still and more quiet.
Yeah, I like that. Mine is just being more present and listening and just being in the moment. Because, like I said, my mind still, I'm getting better, but it still goes into fixed mode or taking responsibility or whatever.
But you're
Solve
listening
mode.
then, huh?
Not if you start telling me, okay, I've been struggling with this. And I'm like, okay, well, these are ways she can solve it. Because now I'm not listening. Now you're talking and I'm like in my head,
Okay.
like Inspector Gadget trying to do things in my head. But instead of just actually listening.
And then there's also like even communications online and maybe not like direct communication, but another thing too is that I am working on, thinking, I'm always thinking about like, why am I saying this or why do I want to say this? And then saying things less and like doing it. It usually kind of goes back to a thing I should do or want to do, unless I'm like telling a story or, it's a thought, whatever. But, just thinking more about that too and making sure that I am doing more things that I'm like talking about and saying when it comes to communicating or communicating an issue or whatever. Just like I saw something the other day that was like, if you're saying the same problems to people like more than a few times, like you're looking for attention and not a solution. And so, there are times when, yes, you do maybe need or want that attention. Like, I don't know what the level is for being like, that's too much or that's too little. But at some point, it does all come down to like, all right, what are we doing? So just thinking about the reasons why you're communicating, what that means with what you're looking for, if you're looking for certain reactions and stuff like that. That's something that I've been bad at before, and that comes with trying to guess what somebody's about to do or think or say and like doing things so they can do something else and like a lot of stuff like that. That's not really good communication. That's you trying to kind of be too controlling. So all of those things are like really past things that I think just being more aware of them and listening when people are telling you or showing you that they're uncomfortable or, maybe they're feeling some kind of way by the way you speak to them, like just paying attention to cues, I think is good too.
Yeah, definitely. Context clues. It's really hard sometimes when it is online or like text messages to catch those things. But I think they're very important to pay attention to.
And online too is so easy to like put so much extra on everything you see too. And so making sure like you understand communication in that, see these words and it's those words unless you really, are talking and communicating with that person. I think another thing I noticed with online communications is it's a lot of advice, but it's like if somebody says something and you see somebody else give them advice and it's like you didn't ask no questions, you had no context, so like what is the point of this? Like this isn't good communication at that point to me too. So kind of understanding and knowing when to engage or like you don't always have to say something back if somebody's like how sometimes you could be like I brush my teeth after I eat, and then like everybody can like jump on them or like get on them about something, and it's like y'all don't anything about like what this person's saying. Like then they start talking about, well, you should have flossed before and this and that, and like they want to give you all these tips about things when you're not asking for tips, or like, oh, I have a headache today. You get all these tips, and it's like, do you get upset about that? Do you be like, oh, thank you? Like there's no way to do it or not do it, but like just recognizing what you're feeding, I guess, when it comes to online stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. Or when people talk about they're sick and then people are like, oh, do this with essential oils and do this. It's like,
because you can get frustrated because like I didn't really ask for advice, but then it's like, well, why did you say that? You know what I mean? Too. So
also, it's all two-sided.
And you can't control what people are gonna respond and how they're gonna respond sometimes, I guess. So it's like you can't really be mad at that.
Do you feel
there? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because there's something I asked you earlier, like, why did you think that was a problem, or like how you were aware that was a problem? And for me now, with the issues that I have with communication, it's because I recognize that in certain instances and in certain circumstances, I feel differently, or like I really feel like I'm struggling a little bit more. And when it comes to communicating, I think that people can get shy, or they can have anxiety or social anxiety, or imposter syndrome might set in. Like sometimes like you're around people and you just kind of like a little sweaty or nervous, or like, everybody's kind of different and has some of those types of things too. And those all stem back to something too. And so like I have some of those things where if I'm around groups of bigger groups of people, I don't really know, like, I kind of will shut down in that space. They're like certain friends, like I kind of shut down more, and it's just I'm trying to understand it, but I think in situations like that where I recognize certain places or types of environments, like going out or whatever it may be, I just have to make sure that, like you said at the very beginning of this episode, that I do what I want to do, so that if I know what the situation is, I'm in the right mood and mindset before I place myself in it, and then I'll be fine. Otherwise, like I can't really force it. And you know how with group stuff, it's like people invite you to stuff or they want you to come to stuff, and you just gotta listen to yourself about that, I think. But I would also say, if that's something you're working on, to challenge yourself to take on that situation and to say like, all right, I'm gonna come in here and beast it, or I'm gonna come in here and like talk to everybody at this party, or stuff like that. I think is a great way to actually go for it. That's what I did when I went to college, actually, the first night, and I went and talked to everybody around my dorm, because I said like I want to be out more versus high school when I was just at home every day. Yeah. So you have to take that ownership, I think, and take those steps. But I definitely communicate differently and feel differently in different groups and different settings, for sure. And that changes my whole communication and how people think about me.
Oh, definitely. I think it's interesting. Like, people from different times in my life or different things might have a different impression about how I show up. Like, I'm always myself, but like, am I as outspoken? Am I as whatever? Am I as goofy and confident in these situations? And I think it stems back, like you said, to just noticing and being self-aware of where you are and how you feel. And like, if you do feel extremely uncomfortable, around people that you don't know, or at networking events or whatever, I would challenge you to try to just be yourself and show up however you want to show up in those spaces. And then if you're uncomfortable or you're excited after, like, journal about why and kind of try to think through that, getting to the root issue impacting you, because these things can impact you negatively.
Yeah, and I like what you said about some people, how they view you, because that is a good point, that people put you in a box based off of whether it's an impression or, whatever happens is fine, but they're going to think, oh, like you work a lot, or, oh, you're quiet, or, I have some people think I'm super quiet, some people who are like, oh my gosh, like you never shut up. And so that's different, but you are all of those things. So people can try to put you in like a particular box, but you definitely do have to be aware of, what that is, I think, and like still making sure that, especially if this is something intentional, like networking or something like that, that you are coming knowing that, hey, this is networking. So, you still have to present yourself a particular way.
Exactly. And not taking it too personally when people have their own opinions, because knowing that they come from their lenses and their life experiences and whatever they're going to, and just as long as you're authentically showing up as yourself in every situation.
Yeah, so we're going to end the episode with some tips on communication, just some things to think about from our own past or journeys. Like, there may be things you identify with, and for us, some of these things I've gotten so much better at, and some of these things I'm still working on. So the first tip was practicing active listening, and listening to listen and not respond. And so maybe, and lately I've been doing these kind of like daily challenge things. I mean, if I think of something, but that may be something that you do this week, is like one day, just I'm not going to talk until somebody like speaks to me, and like, then it's my turn to say something. So being maybe very intentional about that.
And noticing how it feels not being the first person to reach out. I think that's interesting.
To reach out to other people?
Yeah. Like, if you're always the person that reaches out first, like pausing and giving people the chance to do that and seeing how you feel. Like, not doing it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever the first person. Not often.
I think another important one is to consider your audience, whether you're doing your presentation at work, whether you're, talking to your friends, giving an idea, something y'all working on, relationships, whatever. Just knowing who you're talking to can change a lot of things in the way you approach them.
Maintaining eye contact is a staple communication tip. And I think that's a big tip, because it does convey your confidence. Like, if you're talking to somebody and they're looking like down, like, I get, like, people get weird. Like, you don't want to be like, all right, like all right in their eyeballs.
In the soul.
Yeah, but like people are like down and like hunched, and like that eye contact kind of makes you feel like, oh, you're not trusting yourself right now. You're not believing in yourself. So it does give off that energy. And maintaining eye contact, another part of that is, let people feel seen, and to really like look at them. And something I've said before and that I do is like when I'm walking in the streets, like I try to like make sure I look at everybody in the eye because I notice how second nature it is and instinctually it is. Like the closer people get to you when they're walking towards you, you look away, like you don't look at them at all. And I think maybe we do that as like a safety thing. Like that's probably how it started, where it's like, oh, I don't want to talk to people and, don't look at me. And I get that you still have to be aware and all of that stuff. But whether it's like a homeless person or somebody walking by, like actually looking at people, even if for a second, is something that really, I think, makes a difference in your communication with people.
It is, and also gives people the chance to feel seen. Because we so often are on our phones or looking down when we're walking or veering off to the side as soon as you walk up on somebody. So I like that one.
And I laugh every time too, because I'll be walking down the sidewalk and I'm trying to make sure I look at everybody and I notice like everybody's really on their phones. And then a lot of time I'm on my phone too for the same person. And I'm like, man, we're really walking around on our phones. It's crazy.
It's crazy. In that same vein is improving your body language, just being aware of it. Like if someone is telling you something really important and you are closed off, like your body's closed off, or you're trying to present something and your shoulders are hunched forward, like confidence, chest up, like looking in their face or in their general direction of their face, making sure that you're towards them and not turning the other way. Like just little things that seem not important can make the biggest difference. I would say, especially like in relationships and at work.
Yeah, and I notice those things as I'm doing it, like while I'm talking to somebody in the moments I'm probably not listening. Like I'll start being like, "Oh, Lex, like don't cross your arms." And one thing I notice too is I hold my fist a lot, and it's like if I'm just walking or whatever, so maybe not just communicating, but I hold my fist tight a lot. Or I catch myself like why do I want to fight right now? But I have to try to be again conscientious and like try to keep my palms open or like have my hands down and like really like just be relaxed because
Relaxing tension.
Yeah, I get just real tense sometimes. I'm talking to people.
I blame Ryan Kelly.
Maybe. But it's like if I'm tense, then I'm already probably gonna be even more irritable. And I when I talk, it sounds like I'm irritated, and sometimes I am, but a lot of times I'm not. But it sounds like I'm irritated because I'm like tense, and I'm like, all right, like okay, let's do this, or what is this? And I don't have a lot of extra fluff to it, but it's like I'm not relaxed, I think. So
it just reminds me of like the Lego movie. He like walks
like that's how I be. So body language, and then going into that too is the being still. And I'm gonna go into the next one too. It's all the same kind of like just being more still, working on fidgeting less, and that helps me to be more present and slowing down, and speaking clearly, because a lot of times I'll be speaking. I know y'all know because y'all listen to me talk, and my brain is already on the next ideas. And so now, like when I go back and edit, I'm like, the sentence doesn't even really make sense. Like you kind of know what I'm saying, but like by this point, I've said 3 more stories than what I started with, or I'm like, I don't know how I got to this. But really, if I could slow down a little bit more and think about my words and speak clearly, so that I'm communicating a point, the next person you communicate, and you're not just going off and da-da-da-da-da, and they don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, man. Yeah, you talk about me, too, because I get so excited that I just start tripping over my words, and I'm like, blah, 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 because I just be so excited.
Or you do a thing, too, and I do it, too, where you'll say something, but there was no context because I think you were probably talking to yourself. Because I'm talking to myself, too, sometimes some of it comes out, but I'm like, I don't. And then you're looking at me and I'm like, I hate to say, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean? Because you'd be like, yeah, but maybe red's better. And it's like, I don't know, bro. Like, what was you talking about?
Also, I have a habit, like, we'll be talking about something, and then, like, an hour later, I'll finish that conversation, and I'm like, why do I notice I do that all the time. And I'm like, because I've done that with you before, and it was something like that. You were like, what?
Yeah, and like I didn't know you're still talking about the same thing. You mean?
Yeah, like just because my brain has went all over the place and ended up in this
like
one place.
What's happening in your mind? You have to understand that's not what's happening in the other person's mind. Like that's the communication part. So like really, giving a full thought and a full idea.
I think one of the last ones, or maybe the last one for me, is being responsible for your own energy. So not necessarily always being happy or being excited, because that's just not how you are, and that's fine. But just being responsible for your energy and noticing how that affects communications. And like, for example, if I'm driving to work and I'm really upset because somebody cut me off, and then there's this accident, so I was late. Then I come in and I'm angry. and now I'm like snarky with people and short, and then it just realizing how I affect other people and also how that affects my communication style. So just kind of checking in with myself and my attitude and letting myself sit with my feelings, but also making sure that I'm not spewing that over everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's good too. Making sure you're checking yourself on all of that. And the last thing that I would say is just making sure that you also have time for yourself so that you don't feel like your communications are like an effort or a drain per se. Communicate positively with yourself and with other people. And I think, one of the things that I'm learning as we're talking about communication is that when I tend to be irritated or if I'm having negative kind of communications, it's kind of because of something with myself that's not a positive spot. So it's always that analysis. It's always that kind of self analysis, and recognizing that, all right, I need some more me time, or I need to get myself right, and then you can come back to certain people or come back to the communications or conversations.
Yeah, because whenever you take that time for yourself and get the rest, like we talked about last week, things don't like when you're irritated and you're not rested, things hit a little bit different.
Yeah, like and usually when you're irritated, it's something else, but it does affect you. Like every other thing affects you differently. So just recognizing that.
And so screenshot and share like what your communication styles are and how you feel that you've either improved or maybe something that you're working on at Lextopia and CC Fierce on Instagram, at Carlie's Couch. We'd love to hear about your communication journeys.
Yep. And this week's question of the week
dun, 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 dun.
is, what is something you've learned in the last week?
I have been doing my Duolingo and my Elevate. So these are the easy ones because every day I try to like learn a little bit. So learning what like etymology, like what the roots of words mean. So I'm learning some more of those, been practicing. I got up to like 4 little levels instead of 3.
But it's not a specific language?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say not all, but most of the root words are Latin, in even English and a lot of stuff.
But in Duolingo, there's something you're doing just for root words?
This is Elevate.
Oh, okay.
So Elevate is a brain game.
I heard you say
play.
Duolingo, so I thought you were saying you were doing a thing in Duolingo.
Doing both. So I was going to say do both. So Elevate, like working on that and just practicing like all of my like short skills. It's a brain game that I love to play.
Oh, okay.
And then Duolingo, been practicing my present and past participle in Spanish.
Okay. Okay.
What about you?
And so that was new this week for you?
Yeah.
Refresh.
But some of the root words were new.
This week I don't know if learned, but like it actually sunk in. The space between saying a thing and doing it is where all that pressure is. And that if you're gonna do it. Because I literally noticed 2 days ago, talking to one of my friends, I was saying, hey, I'm watching the show again. My friend Kyle and Damo come over all the time, but Kyle was over here and we were watching Living with Yourself. And so anyway, I was like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and keep watching the rest of the episodes. I'm gonna finish it. Cool. He was still at work, and then he said something about Pop-Tarts. I don't know why. I don't remember how I got to that. But I'm like a fat kid, and so I was like, oh, I'm glad you said that. I was just thinking I kind of wanted a piece of cake or something. I remember I had Pop-Tarts. So I was like, I'm gonna make some Pop-Tarts. And then at some point I said, oh yeah, I need to do this too. And then maybe 15 minutes later, he was like, oh, how was that Pop-Tart? And I'm like, I am still sitting here with this on pause. I have not even hit play. I haven't done this, and I haven't done this. Like all the stuff I had said. And so I realized like in that second after I say it, now like I can't say things. I have to just do the thing like when I'm thinking it, because in that little bit of time, all of this stuff filled up that space and other thoughts filled up that space, and then I didn't do it. And then in that same combo, he's like, what? Like, how'd you not? And I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. Like I just realized that like I'm talking. And so I was like, I'm going to go make this Pop-Tart. So I went to go make the Pop-Tart. I was like, I'm going to make this tea. I'm going to go do this. I'm hitting play. I'm watching it. Like I had to just like not really say it, because we as we were talking like in the combo, you could see how like multiple times I had not done the things yet or whatever it was. And so like it all was just like, oh, like it's all the pressures because you're not moving between that waiting part, or you're like saying it and not doing the stuff. So it just, I don't know, it just sunk in more like that's the issue, and the thinking and being in your head is like I'm constantly on a to-do list. Like I need to do this, and I'm supposed to do this, and client thing this, and I have an appointment at 2, and I have this. And I'm thinking, instead of what's that top thing, do that thing.
I love that.
And it's so weird how like that's so regular. Like it's regular, but that's what a breakthrough looks like for me, and that it just sunk in. Like I told you I was doing something 30 minutes ago, and this is how when I look at my plan, I'm like, what happened between 3 and 6? Like that I didn't get anything done, and that's what it is.
Wow. No, that's
like just get lost in your mind. Like for me, that's what I do.
No, I think
and that's why I said I learned
that.
from hanging out more with real people. That makes me sound like a weirdo, but like hanging out with real people, because now I'm conscious of that.
And you can be more aware of it because it's kind of reflected.
Now I'm being aware of it.
Huh.
And like that's why I'm like more aware of like all the moving, all the like how I disconnect, and like how I'm not listening anymore, and like all these things. Like the more I've hung out, now I'm understanding how much I can learn about myself from that. Because then we also talk about those things,
I'm gonna circle back because, yeah, that's an awesome life lesson. Something so simple yet so profound that happened that I learned last week. So after our episode, I was very intentional about resting. Like I mean, before, like you would mark it off on my planner, and it was like a loose, like But this time I like really went to bed on time, and I was trying to use the app to check my quality. Apparently, I was doing it incorrectly, but I'm working on it.
Did you get it though?
I gotta find the right place. I don't have the right place yet. I'm going.
I was like, dang, where your waves at? Because I think mine is like 2 hours or something. But you're right that I saw what it was.
Yeah,
you can see what it is.
You can see what it is, but at the same time, like I would feel like Superwoman the next day, like Wonder Woman. Like I would just feel bomb because I had enough sleep. Like, and I realized that little change, like little tiny changes and adjustments in my life, can make the biggest impact. And just getting 7 hours of sleep a night, who would have thunk it?
Yeah, and probably even more than the sleep is you doing what you said you were gonna do. That also makes you feel like, oh, I did that type thing.
Like,
and so you feel. Yeah, like whatever that thing is, if you're kind of focused on a thing for a moment or, however long, as you're doing these things, that's how you keep like building your confidence and being like, wow, like, I can change all of these things. I can do all of these things that I need to do to improve in whatever space. It's just doing it. And then you feel good.
Yeah.
And then you
just
got
to do that thing.
Yeah. Yep. So you guys think about your communication this week. Think about if there's any ways you see yourself being held back, any ways that you're awesome and great with it. Like you might have incredible communication skills, but hopefully you learned something or thought about something differently from the episode today. And if so, give us 5 stars and a good review and share the podcast with somebody who you think may benefit from listening to the conversation.
We heart you.